Hello team and welcome back to Winners and Losers, the show where we break down the latest and greatest Premier League action. Joining me on today's show, not shirking his duties, may I add, after another harrowing Manchester United loss, it's Joseph Tomlinson. How are you holding up?
Oh man, Mia, it's ugly. It is ugly. But you know what? I'm actually all right, mate. I'm living by the phrase, you can't kill what's already dead. And I am very much dead inside right now as a Manchester United fan. But it is what it is. I had a good weekend other than that. How are you?
Absolute scenes. Well, I'm drenched now. But yeah, I'm good, thank you. Celtic won 5-0. Jota scored another screamer. Already anticipating bids for that little magician in January. But let's move on. Let's move on to today's talking point, because there was a tremendous fixture on Sunday, wasn't there? Chelsea versus Tottenham, and we're going to break it down, and we're also going to do a little bit of, a little bit of tinkering in the transfer market on behalf of Todd Bowley, although he's done enough tinkering of his own, hasn't he? Before we move on to our winner, loser, and moment of the week. Let's revisit that fixture then, because Chelsea and Spurs shared the spoils, didn't they? In a pretty enthralling 2-2 London derby that left both teams on 4 points from their first 2 games. Now, let's start at the finish line, Joseph, by reliving the iconic handshake between Tuchel and Conte.
And it's finished. Antonio, it hasn't finished. Correction. It's only just started. In terms of dugout drama. Been on a short fuse, really.
But Conte did defuse the situation this morning, didn't he, with a cheeky Instagram post that we'll stick on screen right now. A really crucial question before we get into the nitty-gritty, Tomlinson. Who are you taking if them two square off then?
Oh. Do you know what? Probably, I think Tommy Tuchel might have just have the range on him, have the reach on him. Yeah. I've got a feeling Conte might be a bit of a bulldog, but he's got the reach. You know, that handshake really reminded me. It's a bit of a niche reference, but did anybody watch the Carl Froch George Groves face-off from back in the day when George Groves pulled Carl Froch, then Carl Froch goes, "We can all pull a bat. We can all pull a bat."
Sends him
so
over the
good,
table, yeah.
So good. This is exactly what the Premier League has been missing. Exactly, a bit of need or a bit of hatred between the two managers. We need way more of it. I've had enough of managers going, "Oh, your team's so good. No, yours is so good." Hate each other.
Yeah,
Hate each other.
I was on my
That's
feet,
what I want to
man.
see.
Absolutely loved it, although I would take Conte. You don't mess with a made man. Anyway, let's move into the game then, because never mind physical scraps, this was a proper mental scrap, wasn't it? I mean, talk about ingametweaks.com. Now, Expected Goals Show, our old friend Expected Goals, had this game down as a pretty close one, 1.58 to 1 in Chelsea's favour, but it was anything from straightforward in reality, was it? What were some of the things that impressed you then about this fixture?
I mean, first and foremost, Chelsea. Chelsea really, really impressed me, particularly Thomas Tuchel. We know how good of a coach he is, but his use of in-game tactical switches between a 3-4 and a 5 at the back via total fluidity at times was some sight to behold. This idea of using Reece James as almost like a false centre-back at times, who can then operate as a full-back out of possession, is just glorious to watch. I thought that was exceptional. I also thought he got it spot on with his use of set pieces. He'd obviously identified that zonal marking system Tottenham were doing with a slight overload at the front post and continuously used Koulibaly at the back post to cause problems. Obviously got a goal from it, but they had other chances from Koulibaly, ball kind of bobbling to him at the back post as well. I just thought they were exceptional. I thought Conte's in-game switches were really good as well when he went to that back 4 in the second half when they were 1-0 down and then got his goal. Obviously it did come out to bite him a little bit because they got that massive overload on the right hand side, which resulted in the 2-1. But you know, the two managers, like the in-game tactical tweaks, they were so high level, so high level. And yes, there was some good individual performances. I thought Ruben Loftus-Cheek maybe had his best performance in a Chelsea shirt, playing that really interesting wing-back come central midfielder come right mid role. That was very, very interesting. I love Christian Romero. I think I always will, just for his aggressiveness. I think it was 7 tackles in this game. That guy literally would have a fight in a telephone box. But yeah, there was some great performances. There were some whiffers though, wasn't there, Hammer? I don't know. I wasn't the biggest fan of Sessegnon out there. I think that might be the last time you see him for a little while in a Tottenham shirt.
Yeah, he was completely outclassed on that flank, wasn't he? But it was a really high quality affair, like you said, and not got an awful lot of Premier League minutes under his belt. So I do sympathise somewhat. Obviously finished the season fairly strongly. I obviously drafted him into my draft team for this week, only to see him have a stinking performance. So from my perspective, did not enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the difference, isn't it, between the likes of Tuchel, Conte, Pep, Klopp, and the rest of the managers sort of fighting to be a part of the elite. The way they can change the trajectory of a game from the bench. I mean, Chelsea were very impressive in this game, and no doubt Tuchel will be reeling from those missed chances. You have Lloris's wonder save. You have that Havertz volley going narrowly wide at the front post. Sterling blasting over from 9 yards, somewhat unforgivably. But Tottenham stayed in it, and that switch to the 4-2-4 after going 1-0 down was sort of very un-Conte in a way, wasn't it? And then the way they reverted back to the 3-4-3, like you said, after Reece James scored with Lucas Moura and Perisic coming on. It was a real tactical heavyweight slog, and I was so impressed. I've got to say, I thought it was odd that not a lot of shine was being put on Kante. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in this game before he got taken off after 84 minutes. Wasn't putting up loads of tackles and interceptions, things that we've come to associate with him, but he was getting that ball from Chelsea's third to Spurs' third in no time at all. Just brilliant on the ball and running with it. Yeah, I mean, Eric Dyer, game high 5 interceptions. Ben Davies, game high 8 clearances. That back three had to put up with a lot of pressure, didn't they? And it might have cracked on another day, but it was their time to shine. I think they got beat by Chelsea 4 times last season, didn't they, without scoring? So this does represent solid progress for them, I guess. Let's touch upon some of the more controversial issues then, Tomlinson, because the fans won't forgive us at home if we don't. Now, was Richarlison offside for the Højbjerg goal? Would you have been livid if you were a Chelsea fan seeing Bentancur trip up Havertz in the build-up to their equaliser? I mean, there's a few more things, isn't there? But I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea fans hate Anthony Taylor. They hate Anthony Taylor, don't they? How many incidents has Anthony Taylor been involved in at Stamford Bridge now that have gone against Chelsea? A lot. Look, the Richarlison offside, I'm not massively convinced he's in the eye line of Edouard Mendy, I'm not going to lie. I think that's one of the least controversial ones of the day. The Bentancur one is definitely a foul, but it feels like it's too many phases prior to the goal to rewind it. Otherwise, we're going to start rewinding it back 40 phases to incidents that happened 5 minutes ago. It just can't happen like that.
I think it was 40 odd seconds, so yeah, really far.
Yeah, that one probably can't count in terms of a reason to rewind VAR. The hair pull is just a definite red card. I don't understand in what world they can look at that footage, see such a clear hair pull, and not take action against Christian Romero. For it to then result in a goal is absolutely hilarious, and exactly what I wanted to see in that moment. There was every part of my being when I saw him not get sent off for the hair pull was desperate for a goal. The only way that would have been better is if it had been Christian Romero that had scored the goal. But even then, I hope everybody's seen it by now, the celebration of Romero in the face of Reece James when the ball hits the net, he's got to be a contender now for House. In the biggest house in the league.
Yeah,
I think he might be the biggest.
He's coming for Vardy's crown, isn't he? Argentine centre-halves are a different breed. And he is right up there with the most loco, let's say. Yeah, can't endorse the hair pull, but my God, was it an entertaining series of events that led to that second goal, that Harry Kane header. I thought he was lucky to get credited with the goal, actually. I've not seen it from all angles, but it kind of comes off Reece James's thigh. Looks like it's destined for the post if it doesn't get that little nick. But I suppose that is beside the point. This is what Thomas Tuchel thought about all those incidences we've just discussed.
The foul is a clear foul on Kai Havertz in the build-up, a clear foul. We had one tactical foul from Reece James, got straight yellow. I don't know how many tactical fouls Højbjerg and Bentancur did today. Nothing happened. Clear foul on Kai Havertz, okay, situation goes on and on and on. Then it's clear offside from Richarlison. He's in the line of the shot. He even goes to the ball. He does not touch the ball. Edu cannot see the ball. They check it. It's clear offside. And since when can we pull hair on a football field?
Right then, team, seeing as you lot liked the How to Fix Manchester United so much last week, we thought we'd do something similar this week and find Chelsea a striker to elevate Thomas Tuchel's side before the end of the window. Now, this is not an easy task at this point, is it? I mean, a lot of the post-match was focused on the fact that Chelsea still don't have a prolific forward in their ranks. Of course, Mason Mount was their top goal scorer in the Premier League last season with 11. Lukaku and Havertz got 8 apiece. I mean, they should have won that game, but with players missing gilt-edged chances, you'll always know this narrative is just going to continue and reappear and sort of bubble over. So, Joe, is there actually a 15 to 20 goal striker in the market right now at this late stage that could maybe stave off Tottenham's bid to be the 3rd best team in the country?
Oh, I'm not convinced there is. And I think there's quite a few clubs at the moment that are looking for that player and are struggling quite badly to find him. I thought the kind of reaction post-match was quite interesting, actually, because having watched the game and having watched how dominant Chelsea were, I didn't necessarily come away from it immediately thinking, wow, the reason Chelsea haven't won that is because they don't have a 15, 20 goal a season striker. I thought the front line worked quite well.
Much better than when Lukaku featured, right? It's much more fluid.
Exactly, absolutely. Much better than when they had number 9 like Lukaku playing through the middle. So I think the number 9 selection has to be really spot on. You know, I don't necessarily have the biggest problem with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang coming back if it was to come back on a very small cost transfer that was only going to be like a 1-year deal, something like that. Because I really think the best option for Chelsea is to hold their nerve, maybe bring a short-term, low-cost option in for a season, and then look to activate the €80 million buyback clause they have on Tammy Abraham in 2023.
That'd be very Chelsea, wouldn't it? People will be saying at home right now, that's what they did with Lukaku, bringing back a star of the past.
Yeah, and do you know what? People can say that, but I genuinely believe that if they don't move for Tammy Abraham next summer, I think another major club in Europe will. I think he's going to have another brilliant season. What was it, 17 goals in 27 league games last season? Obviously the winner in the European Conference League final, which is obviously the Europa Conference League final, but I'm not putting too much sort of like pressure on it. But I just think he's a fabulous player, and I think that he's almost the perfect striker for like that Thomas Tuchel side, because he works so hard off the ball. His hold-up play has improved so much since he's got to Roma. I was watching him last night. He was literally just ragdolling people about the pitch like they weren't even there. And his link-up play with Dybala already seemed like it was going to be something very, very exciting. If they're not going to do that and they don't want to go for the short-term option, I still think Lautaro Martinez is one of the better options on the market, and I'm really surprised none of the clubs that need strikers have been looking at Lautaro Martinez. The player is getting off nearly 5 shots a game inside the box, has one of the highest XGs per 90 of any striker in Europe, and I haven't really seen his name linked with anyone. And whether or not that's down to the fact that Inter are just going to keep him and refuse to sell might well be the case, but we know that Italian teams need money, and I think with the right offer, Lautaro Martinez might be willing to go to Chelsea, which would be interesting and hilarious, because obviously Lukaku, his partner, came and went, and now they're going to try the other one. It's like they're just trying out strikers at Inter Milan. So my first choice would probably be a short term to get Tammy next summer, but if not, I'm really surprised nobody's had at least a look at Lautaro Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, if he has a good personal relationship with Romelu Lukaku, then Lukaku will probably be in his ear saying, do not go. If you're a striker that likes scoring goals, maybe Thomas Tuchel's system isn't for you. And just to go back, to what you mentioned earlier about Chelsea being really interesting and sort of and fluid in the game against Tottenham. I was actually thinking a couple of weeks ago that Tuchel's not done like tactically really interesting stuff since he's been at Chelsea. Like he shored them up, made them very competitive. He's probably he's a conservative coach by nature, which some people seem to overlook. But yeah, in that game, they were really good, weren't they? And it was a lot more interesting. I think we've got some interesting options down here as well that are maybe below the bracket of Lautaro Martinez. I've got Moussa Dembele down, potentially of Lyon, obviously, potentially Jonathan David, maybe Patrick Schick, who got 24 goals in the Bundesliga last season. Now, they would all be pretty expensive, although I think Moussa Dembele is coming towards the tail end of his deal at Lyon, right? Because that's why Chelsea, Manchester United are interested sort of 12 months ago before he had that problem at Atletico. I think they could be interesting options. I think they would all that well capable of scoring between 10 and 15 Premier League goals. Maybe less so Patrick Schick, because I've not watched him as much, and I am just sort of relying on output there and his sort of performances at international level. And then even below that, other budget options. Maybe Andre Silva might be available from Leipzig now that Timo Werner has gone back there. Of course, he absolutely slapped with Eintracht Frankfurt, but has sort of been rotated in and out of the side. I imagine that will continue now. Timo is back in town. Angel Correa, I think he's been underrated for a little while. He's played in a very conservative system under Simeone, hasn't he? And I think maybe his numbers would receive a boost if he played in a slightly more attack-minded side. Belotti is going on a free. Do they just gamble that he might be able to contribute sort of 8 to 10 goals as a rotation option? Maybe nick him from Roma at the 11th hour? I'm not sure. But there is some interesting options. I don't think any of them trump Lautaro Martinez or Aubameyang. They're the ones that I can... Aubameyang's pretty feasible. Martinez is ambitious, but he's the right sort of profile, I agree. If we had to pick one, though, Tomlinson, what are we saying? Ride it out and sign Abraham?
I'm liking, I would go something like Vardy on a 1 year, then Abraham. I really I like the idea of a short-term fix to Jamie Vardy, if you're not going to play him every single game, because I think he's still perfectly serviceable, like good goal scorer in the Premier League if you only want like him to play 15, 20 games, which I think is probably going to be the case with Chelsea, given that they do still want to play Havertz through the middle. Surely this player isn't going to come in that he's looking for. Like, is he expecting Aubameyang to come in and play 35 games? Surely not.
And I quite like that 3 anyway with that was deployed yesterday against Tottenham. I think if Raheem Sterling gets that goal, then we're not talking about this, are we? And we're talking about him as someone that's well capable of putting up, 13 to 15 goals. So there we have it. That's our solution then. Not the most original, but I think pretty solid nonetheless. Aubameyang or someone like Jamie Vardy to come in for a year, keep them ticking over, and then reinvest heavily in Tammy Abraham. Let's also talk about the Anthony Gordon news, because news did come in late last night, didn't it? That Chelsea had supposedly offered £40 million to Everton for the youngster, while also offering the Toffees a player in return. What were your initial thoughts on this?
I didn't get it. I don't. Where's he going to play? I really am not massively sure about this move from any standpoint, unless he's being brought in to play as a right wing back potentially, because he is right-footed playing on the left at the moment, isn't he? So is he being brought in to play in that sort of role that Ruben Loftus-Cheek occupied yesterday? Maybe that's where Chelsea see him, because if he's in the front line, you're thinking, well, Pulisic's still at the club. Hudson-Odoi hasn't gone yet. Ziyech's still at the club. Is he an upgrade on any of them? I mean, I've watched quite an amount of Anthony Gordon at this stage, and I think he is one of Everton's better players, and he definitely looks like he has some level of talent. But he's at no stage have I watched him and thought, this guy is like the next big thing. Like, he is the next breakthrough winger. He is going to deliver for a top club now.
Unless you catch him for England's youth teams, then he has been very standout in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, he works extremely hard, so maybe that's why Thomas Tuchel thinks he can kind of convert him into a hybrid wing-back. I'm a bit confused about it, mate.
Yeah, like you said, does work very hard. Top 1% of wingers in Europe's top 5 leagues for defensive pressures and blocks, top 4% for tackles, top 18% for interceptions. So I imagine that does appeal to Tuchel, but I can only see this happening really if they've got suitors for some of the names you mentioned, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Ziyech, Pulisic. Otherwise, it feels like a really odd area of the team to prioritise. Maybe they just think that he's going to blow up and he's going to be worth much more than that next season, and they're trying to get in now. We've seen Bowley sort of roll with that level of thinking with various recruits, haven't we, this summer? Not least the youngster that they ascertained from Aston Villa for 20 mil. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit puzzled as well. But what do you lot think about it at home? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to follow this story a little bit more closely, then scan the QR code on screen right now, and Sky Sports will keep you up to date on any Anthony Gordon to Chelsea news that unfurls as the week goes on. Right, let's move on to our winners then. That's enough, Chelsea. We've been talking about them for a while. We'll have to fly through the sort of latter half of the show, Tomlinson. But Nottingham Forest, worthy winners. The wait is over. Taiwo Awoniyi scoring Forest's first Premier League goal in 23 years. Not a really memorable strike. Straight off the shin. Jesse Lingard claiming the assist. But yeah, they beat West Ham, didn't they? And the atmosphere there looked absolutely incredible at the City Ground. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, and that's no surprise to me at all. I went to the playoff final. I tweeted about this yesterday. And the Forest fans at Wembley beating Huddersfield, I've never seen fans like it in England. Honestly, it was carnage at Wembley that day. and yesterday at the City Ground looked the exact same. That's going to be an absolute cauldron. Every single club going there is going to have panics on, especially when it comes to the big games. You know, United might lose 8-9 there. Seriously. Like, some of the big teams going there, if it's like a Friday night football affair, it's going to be unbelievable, that atmosphere, because they've waited so long, 23 years to get back here. They're finally back here, and they've signed so many players. We're up to 16 now. We're on the verge of 16, certainly. It will probably be 16 when they get Jimmy Garner through the door, but it's just unbelievable the amount of business they've done, and they look pretty impressive yet again, didn't they? I know that we talked about that Jesse Lingard moment just a second ago. He's got to score, by the way. He's got to score. It's very fortunate it comes back off Taiwo Awoniyi. But probably most impressive for me was Nico Williams on the day. Another one of their signings, I thought.
The best player on the pitch by a country mile.
Yeah, 7 tackles and interceptions. And it looks like, you know, they lost Jed Spence. And I think a lot of us were saying, oh, you know, can Nico Williams work in that role that Jed Spence was occupying? Because it is different to the role that he was working at Fulham and hasn't really operated in that wing-back role at Liverpool either. So he can do it. He looked unbelievable.
And some absolute killjoys messaging me on Twitter saying that, like, yes, he's good going forward, but, you know, he gives up a lot defensively. He was dribbled past once in this game. And if you're going to play wing-backs, there are going to be moments where it looks like you're caught out of position, isn't there? When you're backtracking, when you're 3 or 4 yards behind the winger. I think he had a brilliant game. I agree, yeah.
And do you think Steve Cooper doesn't know that? Like, Steve Cooper knows that. We're not exactly talking about, you know, the world's best defensive right-back in Jed Spence, are we? No. Like, Jed Spence, his main attributes were contributing in the final third, being able to deliver and time his runs, which is exactly what they've clearly identified with Nico Williams. And some of the recruitment, I've said it on a number of shows this year, doesn't have to work this season. You know, they've signed so many players. If they were to drop down, some of these players are instantly the best players at that level in the Championship. You know, they'll retain Nico Williams. They got him on a permanent deal. He'll be one of the best right-backs in the Championship if they were to drop down. So the recruitment has been both, you know, large, but also quite smart. You know, Lewis O'Brien as well. That is a really smart pickup, doesn't he? He's played so much football over the last few years at Huddersfield. I think that Steve Cooper, it's just going to be interesting to see what Forest do, because I think it's going to go one or two ways. They're either going to gel quite quickly and form a real good, like, brand new club feel bond, or it might be kind of stuttery and starty and not kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, that win is going to help, isn't it? That helped galvanise them,
and that win's definitely going to help. But yeah, hats off to Nico Williams. I thought he was class.
Yeah, and if you go through the transfer business, what's impressive, I think, particularly, you know, when they wrap Remo Freuler up, if they're going for James Garner at 15 mil, they've not overpaid for anyone, really. I think they're really competitive sort of price points for all these players and the potential that they have. It was pretty young starting 11 actually against West Ham. I think it was one of their youngest starting 11s in the best part of like two decades, which is pretty insane, you know, to keep that level of performance up while turning over a new squad and simultaneously making it younger. Yeah, really impressive work from Steve Cooper, and this is what I had to say about the victory.
I thought we were good today. First half, I thought we were much the better team. I thought we really took the game to West Ham and, you know, played high up the pitch and, you know, played some good football, and it was obviously going to be an important day today and an occasion around the football match that we were trying to win. And I thought we handled that really well in our approach to the first half. Obviously the fans were amazing today, and they obviously got off their feet pretty early because of the way we started the game.
Before we move on to our losers then, a massive shout out to Sam Surridge as well from Forest, who grabbed Soufal's leg in the 94th minute when he tried to take a quick throw in, sending him tumbling to the surface. I thought that was top housery. And also, I just want to say to Leicester and Forest fans, like, it's great that this rivalry is in the Premier League this season, but just behave when you play against one another, because the scenes in the FA Cup last season were absolutely embarrassing. Right, let's move on then to losers, Manchester United, and don't really have to paint a picture as to why. Lost 4-0 to Brentford. Joe, I mean, to protect your sanity, give me your biggest gripes from this game then. You don't have to go through everything, just the things that really annoyed you.
I think first and foremost, it's the idea that we're still doing the same things and expecting anything to change. We're still seeing the same players play in a new system, and it's clearly not going to work for him. You know, David De Gea, it's not going to work in this Erik ten Hag system to ask this goalkeeper to pass out from the back. He's not able to do it. He's just not going to be able to pick the ball up and deliver passes and play balls really fast and quick into the feet of the midfielders. It's not going to happen. So let's stop pretending that's going to be a possibility. The shot stopping issue on the weekend is not the first time I've seen David De Gea do that recently. He is one of the better shot stoppers in the Premier League, but far too often he makes those sorts of errors. So I would say probably the idea of not changing things quick enough. I don't really, we don't need to hammer Maguire anymore, but at some stage, is it an idea to give somebody else a go at centre-back? The same probably could be said of Luke Shaw. Is it an idea to start Malacia and maybe even drop Bruno for a bit? I think things need to be changed quite quickly, and we need to stop doing the same thing over and over. Secondly, just a total lack of desire. I think the players just looked beaten after the first goal went in. It's like there's some sort of mental switch in their heads where a goal goes in against them and they've gone totally capitulate within 5 minutes. It goes from
because
1-0.
They face like a very unique amount of criticism anytime something bad happens. United are...
No, I think it's this, they're just mentally weak. I think they're just mentally weak. Manchester United have had this sort of criticism and focus for, I don't know, 100 years at this stage. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world. Every single squad that has played for Manchester United has been under the same focus and criticism.
I suppose they were more protected before, though, weren't they? With Fergie, he was sort of master of I don't know, covering people's asses in the press, and also if people wanted access to his players, they'd have to be a little bit kinder to them. Like that shield has gone. It's been gone for a decade now, but I feel like, yeah,
I think there's a few excuses being made there for the players. I just think that it regularly goes from 1-0 to 3-0 within a 10-minute space, and I think that can really only be put down to the mentality of the players who are struggling to cope with the pressure of Manchester United. We can talk to death, and I know we're going to in a minute, about how much of a problem the Glazers are, and obviously I hate the Glazers more than anybody else. The club is rotting from the head down, isn't it? But I just want to focus on these players just in this little segment, because it's really getting to the stage now where I don't see a single game that Man United win. Like, there's so many problems in the starting 11 that it's almost worth going, okay, we're really going to start from the ground up here and we're going to play young kids in positions, because they would surely give you better output and better mentality than some of the 11 that started on Saturday, who quite frankly gave up after 25, 35 minutes.
I mean, Ten Hag's answer was pretty simple in his post-match interview, and this is it.
We need new players, we need quality players, and we're working on that, and we will do everything to convince them to come.
So the Dutchman's focus quite clearly on better players there. But Joe, a lot of chat, like you said, about the ownership post-match. Jamie Redknapp saying that the players were culpable, echoing the sentiments that you sort of put forth a minute ago. Neville saying that things won't change until the board / the Glazer family are held to account. So where do you sit on this?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, because I think the players are certainly have to be held accountable at this stage. The performances they're putting in are just totally unacceptable. But also, like I said earlier, the fish rots from the head. The Glazer family and their ownership of Manchester United have drained so much from the club and have rotted the club now to a stage where things have been got away with that should never have been got away with. People have got into positions of power they should never have got into positions of power at. Manchester United are far too comfortable at director level, who are being protected to I think they're actually getting away with quite a lot, some of these directors, because the focus is very much on the Glazers. So there's major problems at the top end of Manchester United, and we've spoken about them to death, so I don't want to keep going over them. But from top to bottom right now at Manchester United, it's a mess. And I really feel sorry for Erik ten Hag. I really do, because I don't think it's possible to have been thrown in more at the deep end.
Yeah, and if you're actually interested in some of the decisions the Glazers have made and sort of their tenure as Manchester United owners, then we've done an explained video on it, which we will leave as a top comment. So click that afterwards. Feel free to explore that issue a little bit more if you're not well versed with it. This is what Gary Neville had to say then in an impassioned speech.
The embedded failure over a 10-year period and where the club are currently at has to come back to the ownership. I blamed Edward for a long time, but the reality is the Glazer family left him in situ when he shouldn't have been left in situ in charge of the football side. I think Ed probably would have done a good job on the business side. They've still not dealt with the football operation. They've still not dealt with the players and the recruitment department. They've still not dealt with the stadium, which is rusting and needs massive money spending. Manchester United need £1 billion in this next 2-3 years to either rebuild or renovate that stadium. They probably need another £500–600 million for training ground and other infrastructure projects and football investment. They've only got £40–50 million cash left in the bank. They were cash rich 3 years ago. They had £350 million in the bank. They've no longer got that money in the bank. Something is going to have to give soon, very, very soon.
Right, before we wrap up this section then, Tomlinson, news emerging this morning that James Garner has been made available by Manchester United for between 15 and 20 million pounds. Now, I've seen you put out a few tweets supporting the notion of him starting at the base of midfield, where he did for Forest to great effect last season, albeit in the Championship. How do you feel about the prospect of one of your most promising young players leaving the club for such a nominal fee?
I just don't really get it, because effectively what United are doing here is selling Garner and buying Rabiot for the same price, aren't they? If we're looking at that sort of £15 million mark, and it's quite disheartening, to be honest with you. It really is quite disheartening. Obviously, Manchester United and Eric Ten Hag clearly don't think James Garner's up to it. Fair enough. If Eric Ten Hag doesn't think James Garner is good enough to play in this role, then fair enough. But why have we made that decision August the 15th? Like, we're now 2 weeks away from the end of the season. We've struggled to get a midfielder in from day dot. Let's be real, let's be frank. The reason that James Garner is going is because United do not have the funds required to sign the necessary players this summer. So we're selling James Garner at £15–20 million in order to reinvest it in another midfielder. And at this stage, it looks like that's Rabiot. And for me, that is an incredibly disheartening thing to see as a Manchester United fan. One of our better academy youngsters, who's never been given a shot, by the way, sold to probably Nottingham Forest or West Ham or wherever he goes, where I'm sure he'll be fine. And he might not rip up any trees, but from this position, is it not better to give him a go than watch Scott McTominay and Fred run out yet again next weekend? This definition of madness, like I said, is doing the same thing over and over, and United just can't stop it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, for more on that story, scan the QR code on screen right now and it will keep you up to date. Right, let's move on then to our Fantasy Premier League / moment of the week. And we're going to do Fantasy Premier League this week because the handshake quite clearly between Tuchel and Conte was moment of the week, wasn't it? Yeah. We'll make this nice and quick. Just wanted to shout out in the Football Daily Fantasy Premier League, Harry Card. 105 points this match week. His team is on screen right now. And Gabriel Jesus doing absolute bits for him. 57
he could go more as well.
Points.
He could get more because he's still got Luis Diaz to play. And he's on 105.
Very well observed. So shout out to you, Harry. You're our team of the week. Tomlinson, before we go then, is there anything that you'd like to plug across all of our channels?
If you haven't already, go and watch my We Need to Talk predictions. I know it went out a week late, but that was because we obviously had Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher out the week before. It's my full 1–20, and I'm now thinking I've put Man United too high.
Where did you put them?
Shock. I had them 6th, but I said that they could be anywhere between 6th and 9th, but they could be finishing, in my opinion, now anywhere between 10th and 14th.
Little preview for you there then. 6th it is. I think Manchester United fans would take that right now. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then drop it a like. Subscribe to the channel with notifications on, and we'll catch you next Monday for another episode of Winners and Losers. Bye-bye.